All right, we're going to go ahead and start with our last item on the agenda, the Benicia Unified School District candidates. So please be seated, and we'll get started.
I'd like to welcome everybody back. This is for our candidates forum, and welcome our candidates. I'm going to go over the ground rules one more time, since we do have a new group up here. All candidates were invited to participate in the forum. Civil, respectful behavior is expected at all times. Candidates are instructed to refrain from personal attacks or charges and not to interrupt one another. Candidates' responses should pertain to the questions at hand. I will interrupt you if you are straying from the subject. I will enforce the time limits, and your timers are right over there, and they'll give you, you have 3 minutes for opening and closing and 1 minute for questions, and they will alert you, so keep a lookout. The audience is asked to refrain from applauding or in other ways demonstrating support or non-support for the candidates. We ask that there be no cell phone use or cameras or anything else going on during the presentation. This is a live broadcast that will be taped later, will be shown later. We ask that the candidates cannot use any of our filming for their own purposes. The public is invited to submit questions which have to be suitable for all candidates to answer, so there should be no questions. We will not include any questions that are directed to one particular candidate. We will reserve the right to sort and minimize duplications like we did with the other one about the tunnels. We can find those. And the order of the presentations for their opening statements was done from a random draw. Okay, I'm going to read the biographies of each of our candidates. Diane Ferrucci. Diane has just recently retired after being involved in education for 35 years. First and foremost, she has served the educational community as a classroom teacher for 20 years, in addition to serving 15 years as an administrator of the middle school, an elementary school principal, and most recently as a district office administrator. Diane has lived in Benicia with her husband and family for the past 35 years. She has dedicated her entire adult life to working within the educational system as a parent, teacher, and administrator to support schools and student learning. Now she wants to put her knowledge and experience to work to support the Benicia school and community. Steve Messina. A second-generation American and son of a career Marine Corps officer, Steve began his career helping multinational corporations manage their ocean transportation activities all over the globe. Steve's skill and determination led him to Chicago, San Francisco, Brisbane, and Melbourne, Australia. But Steve was determined to get back home to Solano County. Steve's family has a long connection to Solano County extending back over 100 years to 1906. In 1999, Steve and his wife Cynthia settled in Benicia and started the Double Rainbow Cafe on First Street. Steve then began to focus on community service. A former two-term mayor of Benicia, Steve has served on the board of many local and regional organizations in Benicia, Solano County, and the Bay Area. Steve currently serves as a trustee on the Benicia School District Board. Peter Morgan. Peter Morgan was appointed to the school board in April of 2013. He and his wife, Iona, moved to Benicia in 2004. They have 3 children. Their oldest daughter is a graduate of Benicia High, and 2 sons, one at Benicia Middle School and their youngest son at Matthew Turner Elementary School. Peter works at Charles Schwab as the Chief Legal Officer to Charles Schwab Bank and is licensed to practice law in California, New York, and Connecticut. Peter also leads Schwab's Regulatory Liaison Office, which manages Schwab's interaction with the Federal Reserve, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, and the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Prior to serving on the school board, Peter served on the board of the Benicia Education Foundation. Rosie Switzer. A Benicia native, she grew up in Vallejo, and in 1969 She earned a Life Elementary Standard Teaching Credential, grades K through 9, from Sacramento State College. In 1969, she and her husband were hired by Benicia Unified School District as high school and elementary teachers. Rosie taught at Mills School 8 years, at Robert Semple School 9 years, and at Joe Henderson's for 17 years. With over 40 years' experience as a teacher, parent, and Benicia resident, she states she has a unique perspective of the vital strengths that have made the district outstanding. During 2005-14, she served as the Benicia Unified School District Board Clerk. Currently, she is serving as Board President. Welcome. And in the random draw, Mr. Messina will start with an opening statement, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you for having us all here today. I appreciate the time and energy that went into this. I'm very much a known commodity within the community. My voting record extends back almost 20 years. When I first came on the council, when I was mayor, later on the school board, and also in numerous other boards and commissions I served on while mayor, including San Francisco Bay Conservation Development District, the Water Board, the Solano Transportation Agency, ABAG Executive Committee, and on and on. People know what they're getting. I mean, they know what my record is. They know what how I stand on the issues. In terms of the school district, I think we're doing a good job. I think the schools have progressed. I think the policies that we're putting in place have some long-term benefits and will continue to help improve the Benicia schools. When we first moved here, 20 years ago, when we returned, the schools were in the top 8% statewide. It slipped a little bit after that, and then now we're continuing to work our way back. Over the last 5 years, we've made some very definite improvements in terms of stabilizing the finances, in terms of dealing with a number of the issues that have come forth. We've created some good policies. We've got a good leadership team now. There's always more to do. There's always going to be more to do than we can afford to pay for. The new state funding policies haven't helped us a lot, but we're going to persevere and we're going to succeed. We're fortunate. Our business really is the teachers and the employees of the district, and we're fortunate to have very good employees, very good teachers. Most of them have been with us for a long time. There's not a lot of turnover within the district, and that's, I think, supports that we are doing a good job and we are maintaining high standards. With that, I'll let the next person move on. Thank you.
Ms. Ferrucci, you're next.
Good afternoon. Again, thank you again for inviting us today and having the opportunity to share who we are with you. One of the first things I'd like to share is just to remind you that I am a teacher, I am an educator, and I actually had my start in Connecticut before I moved to California about 35 years ago with my husband and then 2 sons. While I was working to make my credential become a California credential, I had the opportunity to teach at St. Dominic's before moving into subbing in the school district and then eventually getting a job at Benicia Middle School. I became the 8th grade English and history teacher at Benicia Middle School for about 14 or 15 years. I also had the pleasure of taking students on travel I was an Earth Shuttle Florida trip. I used to take students across the country. So it was an absolutely phenomenal experience that I had the privilege of having. When I continued my journey at Benicia Middle School, I became the vice principal for about 1.5 years before moving on to Fairfield-Sassoon, which is the other district in which I had the chance to serve. I really believe that one of the benefits to a school district serving as a governing board that I can bring is the fact that I've been intimately involved in the educational system. Not only have I worked as a parent volunteer in classrooms, I worked as an instructional aide, as a teacher, a site level principal, as well as a district office administrator. I know the educational system, and right now in these very exciting times in California, I've been working very closely with all the changes and expectations that are being put upon the districts. That has been my job. My job has encompassed working with supporting teachers as we move into Common Core and the new testing system, and making sure that they're successful, because when they're successful, our kids are successful, and that's really what I'm about. I want to make sure that we all are meeting those needs and being successful. I think it's exciting as we move our kids into 21st century learning, and that we prepare our children for becoming competitive in this global economy. I shared a story the other night that just real briefly, my son has had the opportunity to work in China, which brought a whole new meaning to me as an educator when I was working with teachers. The fact that I now really have a different view of what the world of global economy means. This is where our children are facing, and this is what our new standards and our 21st century learning will help and support. I believe that I could be an asset to the community serving as a governing board member because, again, I've had this working knowledge which I would like to bring and to share. So again, I thank you for inviting me, and I'm hoping to be able to continue to serve.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you very much. Again, thank you for the invitation as well. This is new to me. This is my first public election. Being in a forum like this is unique. I want to clear up one controversy that I am running for school board. My son, who is Peter Morgan IV, in 6th grade, with a twinkle in his eye and answer to questions, has been responding that he's running for school board. And my father, who's the junior who lives down the street, is not running for school board. I am running for school board. We moved our families. We all moved into Benicia in 2004, largely because of the schools. We were living over in Glen Cove as our children were getting older. It was very much the reputation of Benicia schools that attracted us to move into this community, and we've not been disappointed. We've been very active in the schools as our kids grew. And in 2013, when Dana Dean took another office, there was a vacancy on the school board for which I submitted an application and was very fortunate to be chosen by Steve and Rosie and Gary and Andre to join the board in 2013. And I did at that time really out of a sense of obligation and duty to see if I could help. Didn't have an aspiration at that time to run for political office. This is unique to me again, as I said. But the reason I am putting my name in for the election is I have seen through the work we've done on the school board, which I think has been terrific. The schools are in very good shape. We have a wonderful board. It's very collaborative. But I do bring a unique aspect to the participation in the board in that I participate day to day in a large corporate structure which focuses on the client, focuses on the employees, and focuses on an operating discipline in how we run. And while I see the same passion at work for the type of work we do, I see that with our staff, our teachers, our administrators, it is very different how a private company runs from a governmental entity. And I do think there are some learnings that I could bring to the district in how to approach running a large, complex organization, realizing that, as Steve said, our biggest asset in this district, in any district, are our staff, our employees, our teachers. And they can walk out any day, and there goes your biggest asset. And how you treat them, how you reward them, how you inspire them, has to be our biggest focus. Lastly, the focus on goals. Establishing goals that simply say we will strive to do better aren't good enough anymore. We have to establish measurable, specific goals that we can track and be accountable for, and when we don't hit them, we know why we're not hitting them, and we can find ways to get there later and improve. And I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer.
First of all, for several years, the school board met in this room instead of using the district office boardroom. And I used to always have the same problem. Every time it was my turn to speak, they would always tell me to turn on the mic, and I could never reach the mic because my arms are short. So if you see me doing that kind of thing, that's why. I have several things to say. One is that although my husband and I were both on Benicia Unified School District staff for 35 years, I actually have now almost 45 years of experience with the district because I've been on the board for 9 years. When I first ran for the school board, it was very different than it is now. Our district office was very different. The curriculum in our schools was very different. We've had a lot of changes. We've had a lot of people retiring over the years. We've had a lot of new teachers come into our district, and hopefully they're going to be given, or they are given, salaries that can afford them the luxury of living in Benicia where they work and raising their family here, which is something that my husband and I are very grateful for. We raised 2 children here. My children are now 43 and 37, so they're not really children. And they no longer live in Benicia. But they have a lot of great memories of our school district, of our schools, of our staff, and they still participate through Facebook and other ways to keep in contact with Benicia and its the heritage they grew up with. Over the last 9 years, I think 3 of the really main important issues that I feel really good about as far as being a board member is that we have been able to create a body of trust and integrity and honesty. Oh, that was easy. As I say, there have been lots of changes, but the core of what I do for the board really has to do with kids. Yes, it has to do with supporting parents. It has to do with supporting staff, but it's really about giving back to children and the future of our town. Thank you.
Okay, we are going to do this in alphabetical order for the questions. The candidates have agreed to that, so we're going to be starting with Ms. Ferrucci, and then we'll start the second question with Mr. Messina and down the line. So here's your first question. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge the school district faces?
I think there's some exciting things going on in the district right now that we face. One is, of course, the fact that we are now implementing brand new standards, and that in and of itself is a challenge. It's about making sure that we are giving the teachers the appropriate training, along with training the students at the same time with some of the new learning expectations as well, and being able to make sure that we're all feeling comfortable with that. I see that as one. One of the other big issues that I see facing the district right now, and I don't know if I call it an issue, but we have the privilege of having this bond that has been passed by the community. And the idea of implementing it in a very transparent and open way, I think is something that's going to be really important for our community and our district and our students.
Thank you. Mr. Messina, would you like me to repeat the question?
I'm okay, thank you. I see two real challenges or 2 issues coming forward. One is how we're going to continue to pay our teachers and our staff competitively. The new state funding formula, from which we get most of our money, puts heavy weight on English as a second language learners and lower socioeconomic status. To share an example that I've been given, once it's all in place and all of the monies are coming our way, the city of Vallejo is going to get between $10,000 and $11,000 per child. We're going to get between $6,000 and $7,000 per child. So we're going to have to figure out how we're going to deal with that, and that's a big challenge. The second is the bond funding. We have to make sure that we spend this money wisely. It's a one-time thing, and it's kind of our way of paying forward and taking care of some of our long-term maintenance needs into the future. That's the 2 issues that I see. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. There are a lot of challenges that confront us going forward. To me, the major issue is a business-as-usual approach to confronting those challenges. What got us here is not what's going to take us forward. We need to begin running the district like a business with an operating discipline where we measure and track results, where we reach out to parents for feedback, where we engage with the teachers to make sure that they have not just the right pay, but the level of engagement and empowerment they need to do their jobs. We need to know that if we ask people on the street, a parent or a member of the community, would you recommend Benicia to your family member or friend? The answer would always be an overwhelming yes. We have to move forward and raise the bar for Benicia schools.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer.
Could you repeat the question?
Yes. In your opinion, what is the biggest challenge the school district faces?
Okay, I believe currently the biggest challenge that the school district faces is twofold. One is the stewardship of Measure S, which was passed in June. And for those of you who have been in Benicia for a while, you may remember that in the past, 3 different times we tried to pass parcel taxes, which needed 66 2/3 approval to pass. And although at one point I believe we came within 2% of passing one of them, we were never able to do that. In the last 5 years, we did not receive adequate deferred maintenance from the state. We've been holding 2 schools together that are 60 years old, basically with paint, because we couldn't afford repairs.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the second question, we'll start with Mr. Messina. Do you support the Common Core curriculum, and what are the district's greatest challenges in incorporating the Common Core?
The Common Core basically are the cards that have been dealt us. In terms of teaching, it's almost like a pendulum. We go from one way to another way, back to another way. The state now sets this standard for all of us, so we have to implement it. And the teachers will make it work. That's the one good thing about the Benicia teachers, is no matter what the standards, they understand how to teach, they're dedicated, and they work hard at doing it. They understand that we have to bring a child to a point where they're well-rounded and they can function within society. The Common Core is a key part of that, and we will teach it, but there's a lot of other things that we have to bring to the party too, and that's what we're good at and what we'll continue to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan.
I support the goals behind Common Core. I am troubled by the execution of the state requirements that have forced districts to deploy Common Core without adequate funding. I'm very concerned about Common Core and the application in the home with parents who are not ready for this adjustment, with students who are struggling with the adjustment, and with teachers who are being left, as Steve said, on their own backs to figure out how to make it work. There needs to be leadership and direction and a common purpose directing this effort, which is, I think, a worthwhile effort to get there. But there must be leadership from the top down on how to do it well with the parents, or else it risks just becoming new math.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer, do you support the Common Core curriculum, and what are the district's greatest challenges in incorporating the Common Core?
I do support it. I do think it's a very good thing. I do realize that right now teachers feel that they're doing twice as much prep work because of the new standards, and that many parents feel inadequate to help their students. And I think one of the things that we have to do is we have to institute a really good job of parent education to help them deal with these new changes. And I also think that even though the district has been working on teaching staff about Common Core and helping them be more collaborative within their grade levels and within their departments, I think that even though they've worked on it for 2 years now, it's going to take several more years before they really get good at it. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan, you have the third one. Oh, so sorry. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'll read the question again for you. Do you support the Common Core curriculum? What are the district's greatest challenges in incorporating the Common Core?
Well, I also agree that I support the Common Core standards. I think they ask us to have students do some really great things that'll support them as they move forward in their educational journey and onto their career paths. They ask students to learn to become good collaborators. They ask students to become good critical thinkers and good problem solvers. And that's what we want for all of our students and all of us as adults as we move forward. Are there some challenges or difficulties as we move forward? Yes. The struggles are much like you've heard before. The idea of communication, the idea of communicating with our parents and our business community, so we know what it's going to look like and parents know what their children are going to be expected to do. That's really important, is that we make sure that that communication is open and continually flowing. And the other struggle, of course, is with teachers, is that they have the resources that they need in order to be able to be successful in communicating the Common Core standards and implementing them in their classroom. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now Mr. Morgan, you get the third one. What does the word accountability mean in relation to public schools?
So to me, the word accountability gets back to what I said before. If you cannot answer the question, would you recommend your school or your district to a family member or a friend, then that's how we should be accountable. We should be setting goals that have specific measurable targets for people to know whether or not we're successful, not just for public transparency, but that's so we can continually improve. That's what we do every day in a business sector. That's what needs to happen in government. The reason I'm running for office is because it can't be like jury duty. It has to be people participating from diverse backgrounds and a business-like focus to running this district where we measure ourselves for transparency and accountability for ourselves and to improve and for the public is essential.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer, what does the word accountability mean in relation to public schools?
I think, to me, the most important part of it is the transparency part. I'm a very strong believer in integrity and honesty, and the idea of no backward or backroom deal type things, that everything's out in the open, that there are always open meetings as much as possible. The only exception to this, I believe, is closed session, which has to do with personnel and stuff, and so for legal reasons, it can't be quite as transparent with that part of it. We do have a plan, a district strategic plan, that was developed a couple years ago by our staff, and it had the input of every district employee, both classified employees and certificated employees, in the formation of the strategic plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrucci, what does the word accountability mean in relation to public schools?
I think accountability is always one of those words that has a bad rap, but I happen to think it's very important. As an educator, I've always believed and always taken very seriously that I use the money from my taxpayers, and that they are expecting me to educate our children. Our children are our most important resource that we have moving forward, sets the tone for our future. We should be held accountable to be sure that we are providing a good, strong, positive education for our children so they can become successful as citizens.
Thank you. Mr. Messina.
I think we've all heard it before. The buck stops here. Accountability means taking responsibility and ownership for every decision that you make, not only at the board level, but throughout the organization. Every teacher, every district employee has to be responsible for their actions and the decisions that they take. That's accountable, and they need to know that, and they need to understand that they'll be called on it. That doesn't mean that they shouldn't take chances or be innovative or maybe take a risk or two, but they have to be held accountable for it. Every single decision, every single time. Thank you.
Okay, fourth question, Ms. Switzer, you'll be starting. How do you feel about teacher tenure? Yes.
Well, when I started teaching, it took 3 years to get teacher tenure, and now it only takes 2. I don't really feel that it's the guarantee of a job forever that many people think it is. If we have an employee who performs below par, who breaks the law, who is not doing an adequate job for the school district and the school and the children, by careful review by that person's supervisor, the person can be replaced and can be removed from office. So tenure is not a guarantee of a free lunch. Thank you.
Ms. Ferrucci, how do you feel about teacher tenure?
That seems to be making the waves lately with the newest lawsuit that's going on. Actually, what I see, teachers that are in the tenure process, or probationary teachers, provide us in school districts with a unique opportunity. It gives us a focused, specific amount of time where we really can enhance and enrich their skills and their knowledge as teachers, so that by the time they get to the end of that time, that period of time, and we say that they have now reached the point where they can become a permanent teacher, we know that we have had the opportunity to prepare them as best we can to be successful in the classroom and supporting our teachers. Once that occurs, there's a very strong evaluation process that occurs in our districts that allows us to continue to monitor and support the growth of teachers and to continue to support them as needed. I think it's an important piece. I think it's a piece that allows us to be very focused, and it allows us to provide some really intense and deep training.
Thank you. Mr. Messina.
There are a lot of, there's one in particular recent lawsuit in the state of California relating to tenure. All teachers, when they start with the district, they're basically put on a probationary period, and they go through that anyway. I think that the important thing is to recognize is no one wants to feel their job is on the line for some arbitrary reason. And tenure is kind of a way to protect yourself against that. There's also a lot of discussion about how it's abused, and people use it in ways it shouldn't be. And again, it's that concept of a job for life. But no employee of the school district has a job for life. We're constantly reviewing them. We're constantly providing feedback, encouragement, trying to train them to be better. And if someone's skills slip or they have some problem, then they receive the any types of probation or other things that they would incur as a result of that. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan.
You know, the data in the lawsuit was troubling in what led the judge to make that decision. And unfortunately, I think has caused the concept of tenure to become a scapegoat for bigger societal issues. The reality of it is our schools are not adequately supported, and that tenure as a concept is part of the bargain today in the structure with teachers and in encouraging them to go into that career. The reality of it is that the district leadership from the board on down has to maintain a strong workplace with rules and vision and purpose and accountability, as we talked about. There is nothing in the tenure process or in any of the negotiated bargaining process that would prohibit us from getting rid of the wrong teacher. It's about managing the process. It's about evaluating our teachers along the way. There's no interest in an attorney in the state bar being kept in, nor is the teachers have an interest in maintaining bad teachers. So I think that it's become sort of a political hot button.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrucci, you will be starting the next question.
Right.
Did I? Okay. Why are the school libraries such a low priority? Why are there no certified librarians? Mr.
School libraries?
Yes.
I don't really believe that they are such a low priority, but for the past several years, for the past 5 to 7 years, districts have gone through a very painful process of having our budgets slashed significantly with regards to the funding that was coming through from the state of California. And it's not just the school districts, the cities felt it, we have felt it across the board. With that said, schools had to make some very hard decisions, and that meant that programs were eliminated. In some regard, class sizes were raised, resources were cut back. Everything was done that would not impact the teacher and the student in the classroom as best that they could. Unfortunately, librarians in many school districts became a casualty of that, as well as counselors and other positions that did not directly impact the classroom. So it wasn't that it's a low priority, it was that going through some very troubling times, needing to keep our schools open, noting that we needed to keep children in classes and teachers in classes, librarians were lost. Thank you.
Mr. Messina, Why are the school libraries such a low priority? Why are there no certified librarians?
In terms of the priority, I don't know that that's necessarily the case. Certainly, we're given a fixed pie of money to spend, and if that pie is cut, then we have to make the slices thinner, and things have to be trimmed, really across the board. But the way that we use libraries and the library materials is evolving very quickly. A lot of it has to do with technology. You go to the high school and someone has a question, and can't answer a fact, they'll pull out their cell phone, they'll go on Google, and they'll get the answer. More and more, we see this type of things. We're incorporating a lot of the reading materials into the classroom. Certainly, we're cooperating with the Benicia Public and other public libraries in terms of our system of benchmarking books to reading levels. So there's a lot of different things going on right now. And certainly it's changing, but I don't know that I would call it really just lowering the priority. That's not really the case. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, why are the school libraries such a low priority? Why are there no certified librarians?
Well, I can't really speak to the decisions that were made prior to my participation on the board. I will say that I think the libraries should be a priority. It was an effort that, when I was part of the Benicia Education Foundation, that we fundraised and helped support. It was an effort at Matthew Turner, as my sons went through that school, that I saw the value of the library program and the reading programs that were sponsored through that library. I imagine, as has been said, through the recession and the cutback and layoffs there were some decisions made regarding prioritization, but I'm a big supporter of libraries.
Ms. Switzer, why are the school libraries such a low priority? Why are there no certified librarians?
Okay, first of all, I love this question because it's not true. First of all, we do not set a low priority in our district on school librarians. The basic thing has to do with the credentialed, if you're a certificated person and you have a teaching credential, yes, your pay is higher, but for example, at the 4 elementary schools in our district, the job that they do as a librarian is about getting kids to fall in love with books, to hook them on reading for the rest of their lives. And at the same time they're doing that, usually their classroom teacher is also in that library at the same time helping kids. So for those of you that have been around a long time, if you know Christy Morera Taylor at Joe Henderson School, she's probably been a librarian there for 20 years now. And she was raised in Benicia. No certificated person's going to do a better job. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Messina, you'll be taking the next question. Under the new state funding model, what is the board doing to include all stakeholders in the LCAP process?
We've basically jumped over backwards and gone through hoops to include all of the stakeholders. It all started with what we did when we first started to do the groundwork for the bond. We basically brought the program out and we had numerous meetings at the sites, and we tried to include all of the parent groups. We included the teacher groups, students, obviously board members, citizens. We just opened it up and had meeting after meeting after meeting. I've been very excited and happy with the amount of feedback that came into that project. And I feel of the things that we've done, it's a good example of something that's been all-inclusive and all-encompassing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, under the new state funding model, what is the board doing to include all stakeholders in the LCAP process?
This year was the first year of the program, and we as the board, I think, did give strong direction to the administration to seek as much feedback as they possibly could. I think the district and the administration struggled because the rules were in flux. The forms that the county and the state were requiring to be filled out were changing as they were going. It's a process that we need to continually improve. I think they did a good job collecting feedback. As we go into next year, I think we need to get more participation among a broader set of stakeholders than just the site councils. We also need to do things like what Vallejo does in their budget and participatory budgeting, where we actually ask people not just give us your ideas, but then help prioritize. where we should spend that money. We collected a lot of ideas, but then there wasn't really a feedback loop to go back and say, how should we prioritize those ideas? There needs to be more effort in those regards.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer, under the new state funding model, what is the board doing to include all stakeholders in the LCAP process?
Well, as was previously just stated, there were visits made to each parent group and to staffs of each group. There was a lot of participation among staff about the LCAP and about the curriculum from the curriculum departments. The thing that makes the LCAP really unique is the fact that it has to be approved at the same time as our year budget. And so tying those two together and making sure that what's in the LCAP is represented in the budget and what's in the budget is represented in the LCAP, that's part of the balancing act that happens this year for the first time. Thank you.
Ms. Ferrucci. I think we've got one more after this. Under the new state funding model, what is the board doing to include all stakeholders in the LCAP process?
I think the LCAP process is a real exciting shift for us in our school districts. It was really the state's effort to make sure that we do include all of the partners who are involved in the education of our children. And what's really special is that it allows us to really meet the needs of our community. Instead of in past years, they would say that school districts need to implement a certain plan or a certain program. We're now being able and being given permission to meet the needs of the community as we see it and where we live. We need to make sure that we continue to invite schools, parent groups, and community and business people, along with our students, to be able to participate in various meetings so that when this plan is built, as Benicia's has been built, it is reflective of the voice of everyone in the community, all of the partners who share in the educational program.
Thank you. Mr. Morgan, this is the last question. Speak about the value of longevity of service versus new perspectives and ideas.
You know, I think the reason that we have a 5-member board with staggered terms is for that perspective. I think there's value in both. I think it's very important that a board, which is in California governed by the Brown Act like other government entities, meaning that we have to make decisions as a body together in public forum, except where there are personnel-related issues, means that we have to be collaborative, that to be productive, we have to be collegial, and that it is very important that we don't have 5 people all the same backgrounds and experiences, and that we have people who perhaps different strengths, so that together we benefit. I have found my participation in the board as the newcomer, the person who says, well, why is it that way? Versus I get lots of comfort from knowing that from Steve and Rosie and their connections to the city and to the district have some context, and that's very valuable.
Thank you. Ms. Switzer, speak about the value of longevity of service versus new perspectives and ideas.
Well, I think it's always good to have new perspectives and ideas. However, they don't need to drive the ship. I think that there's a lot to be said for experience, for maturity, and for a historical perspective on how things have happened in the district and how the pendulum has swung in the past and then reappeared again. One of the things that happens is when we have board elections, any board member will tell you that it takes at least a year to really feel like you're less nervous about what's going on, and to feel, regardless of how many degrees you have or how many certificates or how many honors you've earned, it's a real learning process. There's a lot of reading to it. I personally put in about 20 hours a week on it, and it's very lucky that I don't have to work and have a regular job because I couldn't do it and do this too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrucci, speak about the value of longevity of service versus new perspectives and ideas.
Okay, thank you. I'm stretching too. I too have short arms like Mrs. Switzer does. I think it's really important to have a balance when we're talking about longevity and new voices. We always need to make sure that we have that past, that history coming forward so that we're able to understand why things happened or why decisions were made. And I also think it's important to put a new voice into the mix as well. There's always different ways of looking at it, or people bring a new perspective from another community, another area, and that also kind of helps to raise the bar and to continue to move a group forward. So I think it's really important that there be a balance, that it be about people who have been there, who are stable, and also bringing new voices in that will allow us to continue and grow.
Thank you. Mr. Messina, speak about the value of longevity of service versus new perspectives and ideas.
Both are important and both are necessary. I think an extreme in either direction is bad. And it should be not just the board. We're really talking about everybody every day. We're talking about the teachers in the classroom, the staff, the administration, everyone. You always want to have that comfort that you can look at new ways of doing things and thinking about doing things differently, because that's how you get improvement. You need to do that. But you also need the seniority or the experience to say, hey, we tried that a couple of times before and it didn't work. Or did you think about this or think about that? So again, both are extremely important and they need to be somewhat in a balance.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go into closing statements. You each have 3 minutes, and we'll be reversing the order this time. So Mrs. Switzer, you get to go first.
Well, I don't know what, I'm not real sure what I want to say for a closing statement. I appreciate that AAUW and the League of Women Voters each election put on this forum every election year. Although we have 3 seats open this year and only 4 people running. Sometimes in the past, the first year I ran, we had 7 people who ran for office for 3 seats. And then in the off years, since we've all now changed to even number elections, in 2016, we will have 2 seats that are up for election on the board. So there's constantly opportunities for people to seek public office, to give back to their community or the district or for whatever reasons they think of for running. It certainly helps if you don't have an axe to grind, because people's patience for that kind of a reason to run runs out very quickly. And I don't even know why I said that, because that was a really stupid thing to say. But I have enjoyed my tenure on the board so far. We've passed this bond. I don't think our job is done. I want to help see that the bond that we've helped pass becomes fruition at our schools. Thank you.
Mr. Morgan, you're next.
Thank you. I'm really running for election because of my sons and my daughter, and for the reason that I came to Benicia in the first place. I think we have a wonderful school district here, but it is facing challenges, and it is going to continue to face challenges, as all school districts will have in this economy, with the way the state supports the schools. That a bit more business-like focus to our decision making, to tracking our progress against the initiatives we enact, can raise the bar, can make us better and continue to improve and face some of these challenges. We are operating at a deficit in our district. We are hoping that revenues increase in the outer years, but again, we are operating at very tight margins, and we need to maintain a operating discipline and a razor-like business focus to decisions we make. We've got to allocate Measure S funds in a way that maintains the trust that was given to us when that measure was passed, which means not just being transparent, but being accountable by specifying what we're spending on, where it's going, how it's being prioritized, in a way that others feel that they have had input. Common Core, as we talked about, needs a guiding leadership and vision on how it's going to be rolled out. We need to support the teachers and the parents and the students through this change. I know as a parent there is growing anxiety in the district because of Common Core, because of Measure S, because of the budgets. As our kids go from elementary school, as my son is now 6th grade, thinking of going to high school, the parents that we interact with become more and more anxious about sending their children upward through this district, and I want to make sure we stem that. I want Benicia to be a district in which people say, it is the schools of choice, it is the school I would recommend to a family member or friend, and that's why we moved here, and that's why I feel a duty to run for election. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ferrucci.
Thank you again for this opportunity. I think we're in a very exciting time in education. I think we're going to have the opportunity to shape education what it looks like now and for our future for our children. And with our children said, I have grandchildren that are starting in the district now, and I want to ensure that they have a quality education. That's very important to me. I also see some challenges ahead as we move forward, and that has to do with communication, and that has to do with openness and transparency and embracing our community and inviting them in so that they can be actually taking an active part in the development of our educational program. The Common Core standards, the new testing are all challenges which I think will meet positively as we continue to provide the resources. But what I think is most important that I see and I hear over and over again as I'm out in the community is the communication. I see lots of kernels in our district that are really positive, that are really good, that it's happening, but people don't seem to know. So coming from the outside, returning back to my community, I have some ideas and I have some strategies that I'm anxious to share with my colleagues so that in fact we can make sure that this is a very open district that is well communicated and well received by the community. So parents aren't anxious. They need to understand and they need to know. We need to take the mystery out of education for our entire community and make our city strong and vibrant as I know it can be. Thank you.
Mr. Messina.
Thank you. Well, first off, I think we're doing a good job with our schools, and I'm happy the direction we're heading. The reason I'm asking people to vote for me again is I think I've been doing a good job. I work collaboratively with the others, and we've managed to achieve some good decisions. We argue the pros, the cons, but in the end, we're moving in the right direction. There's something about policy. That's really our goal, is to set the policies. These have to be very long-range in view, because the things that we do sometimes take many years until they come to fruition. But it's the direction that we set, the leadership, the examples. That's what drives those that work for us, and below them, and below them, and below them. And I think it's very important that we continue with that. Where we started from, I'm probably the most open book in terms of the candidates. You've watched my voting record, you've watched what I do for years and years and years. I'm a known commodity. You know how I'm going to look at things, you know how I'm going to approach things. I think you can also see that over the years I've demonstrated results. We've actually gotten things done. Looking at the city of Benicia, it was in a much better position when I left than when I joined. And it's my goal to have the same thing happen at the school district. It'll be much better when I go than when I first joined. Certainly for the first 5 years, we've done a number of things, as others have alluded to, but there's still more to do. There's still some things that we have to set in concrete, and I want to work on those for you. And with that, I'll ask you to vote for me if you haven't already voted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank our panel this morning, our candidates. Appreciate your all running, and I appreciate your dedication to education. And I hope the audience will join me in thanking them as well. Susan?
That concludes our program. I want to thank all of you that stayed for the entire program. I know they had a lot of other things to be doing on a Saturday. I want to thank our moderator, Belinda Smith, for the excellent job she's done, the city for allowing us to use their facilities, all our volunteers, as well as all the candidates and presenters today. Again, there are some pros and cons information as you walk out the door if you haven't already picked it up, and have a good rest of your day Saturday.